right. Now it's time that we change our track a bit because our next panel discussion is asking us a question. Is measuring the ROI of marketing activities still a challenge? We have experts with decades of marketing experience and insight who will share best practices and discuss some innovative ideas. Please join me in welcoming the moderator of this session, who will introduce us to our panelists, Sumit Mahajan, Chief Sales and Marketing Officer at Datamatics Business Solutions Limited. Take it away, Sumit.
Yep. Yeah, let's do it.
This is quite a different view from the other side, but anyway. So while my team joins, I think first, thanks a lot for everybody for coming down here. This is, I think, the best time to be in Vegas. We're not here for the right reason right now, but so today I think what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about marketing ROI, especially about how do we measure marketing ROI. As all of us know, this is an evergreen topic, right? This has been going on. We've talked about it for decades, but I think the catch that's what's changing as we speak is with the advent of MarTech and with the way now there are attribution models, there is customer journey that we can track. It has become critical for us to now figure out, is this really doing justice to being able to measure marketing ROI in two ways. Number one, when we are talking about the marketing function as a whole, and second, inside it, of marketing activities. And from my vantage point, so as the introduction just was done, I lead sales as well as marketing for Datamatics. And I can tell you that in the boardrooms right now, marketing questions are becoming as pivotal, as important as sales questions. And that in itself makes it very critical for all of us to be able to both get the messaging right on what marketing is doing for the organization and be able to clearly define and measure what is the return that we are getting. Okay, so let's do a short round of introductions first. I lead Datamatics. Datamatics, we are an AI first lead gen and a CRM enrichment company, and we work with small, medium, and large enterprises to give them intent-based leads. So with that, I'll let Nick, if you want to take on.
Thanks, Sumit. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicholas Adams. I'm President and CEO of Ninico Communications. We're a public relations and advertising agency, proud to be headquartered in San Jose, the capital of Silicon Valley, where we've been for 11 and a half years. And we launched our Los Angeles office about 6.5 years ago. Both the Silicon Valley Business Journal as well as the Los Angeles Business Journal have both named us a top agency annually in those two regions. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about the return on investment, today, but I'll get into something fun today called return on involvement. And I hope you'll pay attention to what that all means to us, because I think there's some little nuggets of wisdom that we can pass along to you in that respect today. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Nice to be here.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Schmidt. I'm the marketing director for Weibel Family Winery. We specialize in California sparkling wines and California champagnes, wholesale and private label. I also work with Herrera & Company and do elections campaigns and a lot of work in the political arena. So while there's plenty to talk about specifically here, I'm focusing more on the grassroots side of marketing.
Hi, this is Madhu Gulati, and I am a startup investor with a lot of decades of experience as a marketing entrepreneur. I am the co-founder and the president and CEO of Marrina Decisions. We are a marketing operations agency, and we support clients like Google and Indeed with their any marketing operations challenges and how they overcome it. Today, I'm super excited to share the stage with all of you, and I'm super excited to be here as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Madhu. And as you saw the panel, right? So this is a very diverse panel. I think that way you'll be able to get a very good perspective on all areas, like 360 view of marketing ROI and its measurement. So I think the first question that at least we thought will be important to question and answer is what is marketing ROI, right? I mean, for all of us, as we, it's an obvious question and obvious answer saying, okay, what's the revenue that is generated from the marketing spend, the marketing dollars that the organization is spending? But, that simplicity has a lot of dimensions to it. So now when we are talking about the numerator, where we are saying, what's the revenue that has been generated, it starts getting pretty complicated when we are trying to draw correlations. So as I said, since I lead a B2B company, in that I have a marketing team that hands over the MQLs, move to the sales team, that change it to an SQL, that work through to get to the revenue. So now while an opportunity could get tagged as a marketing lead, however, the revenue that comes out has collaborators as well as sort of co-owners. And that makes it very tricky because now the attribution becomes complicated. So now we are saying, can the sale be attributed to the salesperson, or should it get attributed to the marketing person? And that's a call for me, for example, to be able to analyze and be able to give weightages for the attributes that each of these parts of the organizations have delivered. So that's why this question of what is ROI, how is it measured, becomes critical. So I'm passing the question over to Nick because he can sort of get through on the PR side and your world.
Well, I think it's an interesting place to start. Thank you for that question. Yeah. I think public relations is probably the hardest place to begin with this conversation of actually being able to track A, measure B, and then really analyze C. And we have ways of doing this, but rather than focus on return on investment, I want to shift a little bit in the way, and I'm still going to answer this question, but I want to shift a little bit in the way that the public relations industry, in some cases, actually measures some of this. And this is called, for us, which is a trademark that we own at Ninico, it's called return on involvement. And return on involvement for us means a lot of different things. And I'll get to unpack some of that with you today. But chief among them, it means how are we involved in integrating all of these pieces? Because so often, whether you are in-house at corporate side or on the agency side, working to drive some of these opportunities for your clients, you're getting these questions all the time. Well, what are we going to send to the client, right? What's the deliverable, right? Really, what's the goal? And so if we can unpack that and measure it in a way that says these marketing and messaging processes that we're building out are connected to your business development goals, or if you're on the agency side, to your clients' business development goals, now we're getting involved in some different spaces. And the way we measure some of that is certainly by deploying some technology. Absolutely, the PR space, one of the many beautiful functions of the marketing communications industry does have amazing AI out there. And so we absolutely deploy some of that, whether it's a platform like Coverage Book or whether it's a platform like Meltwater. We're able to engage with journalists in real time, but we're also able to measure the success of the editorial coverage that we're securing for our clients and then be able to pass that along to our clients as well. Return on involvement, though, also means something else. And this means, for us, it means balancing what we're doing with the digital footprint for our clients with what we're doing offline, and being able to showcase that balance to our clients and sell that brand promise in the marketplace, whatever industry they're in, doesn't matter, is really important. And that means, for us, that means getting involved in your local community, effectively engaging with your chambers of commerce or your local Rotary Club or whatever that may be, because that brand promise gets delivered in a very human way in those instances. And while you can't track it as well as you can track some other opportunities that Summit has been talking about, we believe that that is just as valuable, if not more, because it's human to human, it's person to person, right? And so that return on involvement is really showcased in a thoughtful and I would say meaningful way. So for us, it's not either or. it's got to be in public relations. It's got to be this really unique balance.
Yeah. So return on investment. I know we often talk about the cost that we put in, usually meaning ad buys, right? Most of the time we're talking about where did I invest money? A lot of times what I look at too is where did I invest time? Because one of the greatest resources we have as individuals is time. As a company is the time that we're paying for our employees to have. And it's an expense that often gets forgotten in those calculations. And I think that's so important. Return on investment's fantastic. We all want to see dollars come in. A lot of times things that I'm working on don't come in dollars, and it's a little harder to chase that return on investment. While we chase it in votes sometimes, return in votes. Another category that I work in a lot is with brand loyalty. So one of the products that I represent, we don't sell directly, we're using a distributor, but it's my job to drum up brand loyalty so that there's a demand enough for that distributor to fill. And it's a little tougher to measure because the sales don't come direct to us first. The returns don't come direct to us first. And it does get murky when we look at the return. And I think that's something that brand loyalty always faces. Brand awareness we can measure, but brand loyalty gets a little harder. Who's having conversations? What are they talking about? Specifically when I work in elections, most things are done in a conversation. It's those backyard conversations you're having with your family, your neighbors. And I need to know that those are going to go well, but it's a lot of human trust and it's a lot of relying on the human element.
So that's very interesting. So I would go back to what Nicholas was sharing about PR. So consider PR as one of the channels, right? So where I come into the picture, my expertise is more on the demand gen funnel for big enterprises like Google and Indeed. And what happens there is PR is one of the channels. Now imagine there are 10 other channels. And then what Sumit was talking about is, the attribution. 10 channels, multiple attributions. It really gets complex. In layman's term, if I have to say what is a marketing ROI, I would just put it converting or connecting marketing efforts to the revenue. Very simple, right? Now it gets complex when we break it down. Let's say you do one webinar and your pipeline goes up by $1 million. What would you think? Oh, wonderful webinar, success, right? But you don't know what went behind that or before that lead actually got converted into MQL. There might be organic search, there might be blog, there might be any other thing. So all that coming together and then getting to a perfect ROI is what is a marketing ROI, I would say. Now, of course, it's very, very, very challenging, I would say. I'll go 100 years back. There was a quote by John Vanderbilt. He said, half of my advertising money goes waste, but the trouble is, I don't know which half, right? So it's interesting, even today, when we work with senior marketing leaders, half of them, I would not say half, maybe a little less than half, they say that, I don't know what I'm measuring, or I don't have the capability to measure. And this challenge is ongoing. And I would break it down to say, either you don't know what you're measuring, how you're measuring, and to what extent you are measuring and finding the trend. And are you taking any action, even if you know that? So these challenges are still there. And I wish I could say, anyone can do it. There's a perfect example. We can say, oh, this is a perfect marketing ROI tool, platform, or this company does it. There is nothing. We all are getting better and better, but we are not there yet.
It's bringing balance.
Yeah,
trying to bring a balance. And I would say, there are some of us here at this conference who are on the agency side, and then there are also others who are on the corporate side. I think the corporate folks do it really well for their own brand. I think I would say the agency industry, the industry sector, does a really poor job of doing it for themselves, right? And so we're so focused, close to 100% of the day, Monday through Friday, how are we driving success for our clients? And that's what the conversation is. And that's how we drive success internally on the agency side. And I'm seeing some heads nod out there. So I know you are understanding what I'm talking about. I would challenge the agency sector of the Marcom space to think bigger and bolder and better about their own agency brand. And what you do to move the needle successfully for your clients, you begin next year to do for yourself as well.
So I mean, each of these perspectives obviously comes back the full circle, right? So I think from the answers we can see that each of our definitions is slightly different. And two, once I put on my sales hat on and as the head of growth of the company, I'm again back to numbers, right? And that's the part I think starts becoming tricky, because ultimately I'm going to spend dollars, whether it is, if you think about marketing, right? There are 4 channels I would put it into marketing: the inbound, the outbound, the sales channel, which is your own sales pipeline, and the 4th is the sort of the ambiguous channel, which is the brand and all of that, right? So those are the 4, the first and second, which are typically creating the demand gen, the inbound and outbound. And then once the inbound, outbound channels get leads, that's where sales kicks in. And the whole thing is boxed around your brand, right? That's the way I would sort of term marketing as a whole. Now, in all of this, I think each of us have to work around what is getting measured today and what we think we can improve on. If I think about the first aspect, given I'm guessing some of you would be from MarTech area or at least use the analytical tools, in the digital space, I think right now, there is sort of a very good methodology to be able to track who's coming in, who's going out, and what's the return that is happening off that journey. So there is still a method to the madness. But once we talked about attribution, once those gets into a multi-touch campaign, it starts becoming more difficult because none of them control how that prospect or client moves through that funnel. That's one. Second, as we talk about brand, and we're talking about when the political pieces of it, where you're on the ground talking to people, what tangible uplift any of those have is where, as Nicholas, you're defining, agencies have to work to make sure there is a way to box it, define it, and measure it. Because the more intangible you remain, the bigger the pushback is at the board level. When I'm sitting there, I do get these questions back saying, yes, you did this 3 years ago as well. So what? What really happened? And unless you're able to correlate that activity to an output or an outcome, that's something you're opening up yourself for question. And whether it happens today or tomorrow, there will be a closed loop which could go against you. So I think one of the questions I'll push back again is, what do you think is the biggest challenge with the arguments that you have with your clients, etc.? And how do you think, what is the path to the future which gives you, better visibility or better uplift?
That's a great question. I would say education. I think it must start with education. I think most of the clients we've engaged with and had the blessing of working with over the past decade plus, if they've not worked with an agency partner before, they really see an agency as a vendor. And we are not a vendor. In fact, when we are seen as a vendor, we have been known to walk away from clients and actually terminate those relationships because it wasn't the kind of relationship that we understood it to be going in. We look for long-term clients who want to obtain their big marketing challenges with sound strategic advice and see their agency as a strategic business partner, because not only A, do we understand their tough marketing goals and serve that goal, but B, we fundamentally understand their business. Forget marketing for a second. And I would say this to all agency leaders at the conference today, go back and really do a deeper dive into your client base, your client family, and treat them differently. Don't treat them as a marketing project or a challenge, but treat them as a business as a whole. And if you can go in and understand how their revenue is driven and their big business challenges, again, not even marketing, but just their business, right, in and of itself, you're going to start to see how you deliver success for them takes on a very different method or strategy or opportunity, because now you're starting to think like you are actually in the weeds with them every day, right? So stop thinking of yourself as a vendor to A, B, or C, and start thinking of yourself as a strategic business partner. And I would say, to answer part of that question, part of the goal is being able to deliver that data back to the client. And so whatever, right, that's how we get those renewals. That's how they understand, that is actually moving the needle, right? And some of it, Sumit talks about the inbound. And I think while the inbound happening organically is important, PR can actually drive some of that inbound. So rather than pulling in a PR agency partner too late, as I would say, to just sort of talk about what's happening, messaging what's happening that's good and successful in the company after the inbound happens. In my opinion, that's too late. Bring an agency to the table early on and enjoy those conversations with that agency partner to encourage more inbound, right? The third-party validation in the marketplace for a brand or a business decision maker being quoted somewhere, having a feature profile by, pick your publication of choice, and your publicists or your strategists pitching that content and securing that editorial coverage, that can actually drive the inbound. So there's a little bit of a shift that I would encourage businesses and business decision makers to make, of pulling people in who are smart in this marketing space to encourage them to have some of that conversation earlier.
Absolutely. So kind of piggybacking, and with all respect to it, I think the biggest challenge I have is people who list brand as number 3. Right. Because if you don't have a strong brand identity, those inbound and outbound will come to a halt. You cannot maintain that. You will come off as inconsistent. There won't be a clear who you are. So I would say the first challenge in any return is a strong brand. Know who you are and communicate it clearly. Working along with what Nicholas is saying too, I think while this is the Marketing 2.0 conference, there is something to say about it not being all marketing or PR. You have to look at communications as a whole and really embrace the partnership between things like PR and marketing with a strong, consistent messaging. Those are things that they take a lot of work, they take a lot of time, and you might not be able to financially measure the return, but they're important. The other thing that we don't talk about enough with ROI is the human element. There are facts and figures, there's analysis. I am the first one to say that you should make your marketing decision and strategy based off of analytics and what is working and what isn't. I have an article coming out soon called Pivot about changing the plan because of how the KPIs are coming through midway, and being willing to adjust your business plan even, not just your marketing plan. But the human element is something we need to consider. We saw a spike the last few years in ads that targeted nostalgia. Why? Because we know there's value in people having feelings, but I can't measure your feelings. I hope that it comes through in sales, but I can't measure if I got that warm, fuzzy feeling that I'm looking for from you or not, but I know there's value in it. And there is an importance in putting investment into things that have value that we don't see a financial return on. And also, not every marketing campaign is designed for financial returns. I've worked on campaigns that are dedicated to recruiting volunteers. I'm not going to see a financial ROI in that. I'm going to hope to see a return in volunteer count. I've worked on things that are about referrals. It's really hard to track if you got the referral. It's not hard to track if the referral converted to a sale, but it's hard to track if people are talking and giving referrals. It doesn't mean those campaigns don't have value. They are still important and still an essential part of business.
The integration between that, though, that you're talking about is really interesting, right?
Absolutely.
That the piece where it breaks down in communication somewhere between campaigns or between different verticals or between different platforms. I mean, you probably see it all the time with a ton of your clients, right?
So it's interesting, both of you are saying the same thing, but in a very different way, right? And this is very interesting. Now, and that's where it comes from. Like, marketing ROI is not one size fits all, right? We have to customize it. You have human element to it, and you have, the evolvement and involvement of those PR channel. So what comes back to us is like, I'm sure we all have some metrics. When we say, okay, top 10 KPIs for marketing, we have a list: email clicks, campaign success metrics, and all. But still, why we are talking about this session today, challenges, right? We have marketing ROI challenges, even if we know we have 20 different metrics we can pull the report from. The reason is, because we don't have the entire channel figured out yet. And as an agency, like you were talking about education, of course, I'm also an agency owner. So what we do is we become our client's trusted advisor. And what that means is we are extension of their team. Most of the time, the teammates, they don't even know that they are from Marrina Decisions versus Google team member. So it's very interesting when we play that kind of a role. They fully trust us, and we participate in each and every campaign discussion, demand gen funnel, and build it from ground zero. And the results we share, of course, we have been trusted for last decade or so with so many big premium clients, and we have built so many best practices. And the major one, because of this marketing ROI, which is totally a challenge for any client we work with. So what we came up with the methodology, which is called STAB. We were just discussing, as a team, best practices. So we said, okay, let's take a stab at it. And the same STAB we used as a STAB methodology. The STAB is, and it definitely is a great one. We have been using it for last 5-6 years. It's been successful. So STAB is the skill. Over a course of time, we have seen marketing, we used to think it's the right brain. You remember 20 years ago, it's just the right brain, creativity and all that. Slowly and gradually, we moved from right brain to left brain. So now we know it needs a little more metrics. But how many years ago did you see that we had a separate data person in the marketing team? Now it started, right? So the skills, it can be creativity, it can be data, it can be operations, it can be design, So first we need to know what is that marketing operations team is going to look like. And not every organization is ready for that. So that's the S of a STAB. T is time. How much time are we spending today? We think, okay, one campaign out of the door, we're done. I'm good. No, you need time to analyze. How did you do it? How much time are you spending on analyzing the data? How much time are you spending on QA, that email? How much time are you spending on your PR campaigns? So all that outreach, we are doing that. Then this STA, A is our, forgot. So A is the attribution, which was the main one. So the attribution is more about, what would you attribute to your campaigns? It is single touch or it is a multi-touch. So single touch, I would not say it's wrong, right? We all know if it's a small company, then yes, you can attribute to that one click or one filled out form activity. But if it's a multi-touch, big enterprise, you have to depend on attribution. And how do you get that? And then the STAB, which is the B part, is the business data and the technology, which is the major one, right? So the business data has to be clean to get to the metrics. If it is not clean, yes, it's going to go waste. And the technology, the MarTech world is full of technology. Making the right decision, which one to take and which one to invest in, is very critical. I have seen, especially working with hundreds and thousands of clients, they buy one MarTech solution and then they say, oh, this product sucks. It's never that way. Product is good. It's just, it did not meet your requirement and need. So there is a product that might fulfill your needs better.
It's interesting that you mentioned clean data.
Yeah.
And I think that's something, we haven't talked a lot about clean data, right? Versus data that isn't actually accurate, right? One of the clean or not so clean data that our clients still ask for, that I'm not sure why we haven't challenged them to think differently about that. I think I would encourage all agencies to challenge their clients on this. But AVE, right? I mean, this data point around advertising value equivalence, and in public relations or on a marketing campaign, if I had spent $50,000 on that campaign, show me what it actually was in terms of return, right? Organic return. Well, the reality is that the American Marketing Association, the Public Relations Society of America, and AAF, the American Advertising Federation, have all come out against AVE. And so there are better ways to do this now. So part of talking about data and metrics and KPIs here today at this conference is also thinking bigger and bolder and better around how we are educating the industry at large, but also our client base, saying, I realize that you're asking for that data point, and I realize why you're asking for that data point, but I'm going to reposition that conversation and show you data that is actually clean, data that actually backs up the work that went into that campaign. And the final thing I'll say about that, this conversation that we're having right now, sort of organically happening, I love it on stage right now, around this, when we see data not measuring up to what we thought it should be, where it really ought to be, is based on, when we go back and try to analyze this, the messaging fell somewhere. It was not consistent. And so it didn't help meet that sales goal that Sumit had, right? It didn't move the needle, right? And so he's gonna look at this from a sales perspective and say, well, I'm not spending a dime on that next year, right? But it wasn't for lack of the data being real with you. The data was being real. It went back to the communication piece. It was the message that failed, right? And so really getting strategic around how your messaging is synchronized across multiple platforms is totally critical.
I think that's such a great point, and it really ties into what you were saying earlier too, that there's a failure sometimes not in the data. The data is there, but the data interpretation, right? That product didn't fail you, you plugged the wrong message into it.
Right.
Just because the tactic doesn't work when you deploy a campaign, it doesn't mean it was a bad tactic. It doesn't mean that the data that said your customers are there was entirely wrong. Sometimes we have to stop and look partway through and say, okay, I really believe that data was right, but what's coming back in my return isn't what I expected. Don't kill the tactic, look at the message.
Yeah, and I think, see, I'll try to sort of summarize. Obviously, each of you have great perspective on this. I think, and especially in this particular case, in a way, I would be your customer in a way, right? So I'm sort of being critical because of some of what I'm trying to think through and putting on a sales as well as a growth hat. I think you're right. I think in each of your cases, you're saying, you as partners, you are very strategic, you are very collaborative, you are very, you're trying to make sure that the brand and the messaging is right, so that that touch and feel of that organization is correctly positioned into the market, right? And I think, and to your point, I think some of this is tangible, some of this is intangible, right? And I think from the corporate perspective, I think that is the point that I'm always looking at, and I think many leaders that are here would understand. If you look at an organization, most of our sales budgets are, say, 15 to 17% of the revenue of the company. My marketing budgets are 1 to 3% of my organization's revenue. And so what that basically means is that that is a smaller percentage, and hence I want to make sure that I'm taking a very right decision, because it's absolutely at the top of my funnel. I think, Kelly, you were right. When I was talking about brand, I was saying brand actually boxes the whole organization. So I'm not saying it's number 3, but it is perhaps the most strategic thing. But for us leaders, the challenge is to make it tangible, right? So when I'm spending in my budget this year, and I'm saying I'm spending on the brand, my board is going to ask me, okay, so when do I see something out of what you're spending on brand? 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, give me a time horizon, right? I'm on the clock on that. So I think these are great points. And the piece to point around strategic as well as collaborative, as well as data-driven, is that more of us are hence trying to move the needle on this matrix to saying marketing can also be looked at with LTV by CAC. Okay, again, might be this is a a concept relevant or not relevant for each of you. But what I'm saying is, if your brand is doing a good job, the relationship would be a long-term relationship. So don't look at dollars earned from an organization this year. Look at it over a period of time, because that gives you that, hey, you did actually do a good job on the brand, right? So it's sort of long-term value. When I'm talking about the denominator, I'm talking about the customer acquisition cost, right? So when you're talking about that effort that you're saying, on the ground effort that you're trying to do, whether it's a PR effort, all of that for me as a leader, I'm looking at it saying, this is a part of the customer acquisition cost. And as a matrix for an organization that is thinking long-term, this should be in the right trend. It doesn't need to have it doesn't need to go up and down. It can have a very, slow growth path, but it should be in the right trend. It can have blips. And I think that's the critical element of bringing brand together, bringing your strategic collaborative approach together, and hence being a long-term partner for that organization. So you're not being viewed as, okay, the PR company, what did they do? They did this, it didn't yield results in 6 or 12 months. You're saying, no, let's do a longer-term deal, think of long-term value, what the value that the customer got, and hence what's it that the organization actually got out of it.
Two of the really important things that you touched on are budget and process.
Right.
And those are things that most marketing individuals, whether you are the CEO of a company or you're an advertising rep in an agency, you're not necessarily always thinking about those things. But you're right, when it comes down to it, the budget is going to drive a lot of that, right? And it's fascinating to hear you say, oh, sales is at 17%, right? I mean, that's a massive number when you really stop and think about it. And marketing is maybe 1 or 2%. So what's going on here? Why is there this chasm in better understanding how to partner with marketing? Not use it. I don't want to be used. I want to partner with you, right? Right. I'm not that going back to the vendor idea, right? I'm not a vendor. And then the process piece, right? It's okay. Well, what's the process that really works? Is it a quick project here and there? That doesn't work. Come on, let's be real. That doesn't really work. A project effort here or there is a Band-Aid approach to anything in marketing. It's not going to be as successful as it could be or should be. So if you think strategically around a project, whether it's increasing sales for a specific sector of your business, or the educational outreach component of a nonprofit organization that you're involved with, whatever it might be, if you're more strategic and say, okay, this is long-term growth.
Yep.
Because short-term growth can be motivated in other ways, but to really tap the power of marketing, we're going to think long-term. It's why our agency doesn't do anything under a 1-year agreement with any clients, right? PR, I would say marketing in general is not a tactic, it's a process. And if you treat that process with utmost respect and really partner with that process, watch out, because magic can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Nicholas is saying about the long term, I mean, even within marketing plans, there tends to be a lot of focus on a campaign, and we look at how is this channel returning. But it's also really important that when we go to the beginning and we're planning that campaign, that we're looking at a longer lifetime picture of how we want this company talked about. Who do we want to be in 10 years? Who do we want to be in 20? Because while we might be trying to get customers tomorrow, you want to make sure that those are the same customers that you want in 10 or 20 years, and that you're not doing a full pivot in the middle. I would also encourage any company out there, even smaller companies, to find a partner. And it might not be a PR firm quite as stellar as Nicholas is, depending on your budget. But even if you're just partnering with them for audits once a year or every other year, it's easy to be so ingrained in your own company that you're interpreting data how you want to see it. Or that you're just missing an image because that's not your perception of your language. And it's important to have that third party come and check you, remind you, and help you. I would encourage any company to partner with another agency at least a little bit.
So this is very interesting, like the budget, especially the marketing and the sales budget.
We all hung on to the budget. That was so funny, right? It's very real.
This is B2B I'm talking about. I'm talking about my budget.
So, personally, I've worked with a lot of startups, and I've had a lot of other clients in any vertical you talk about. And of course, we are on the marketing side. So the very first thing when we sign an agreement with the client, you can easily make out it's a sales-driven or a marketing-driven company, right? So sales has more budget or power versus marketing. And the way you do that, and it is changing, now because of the marketing ROI. So the way you do that is, if you are able to justify your marketing spend to the CFO, the CEO, you are in good shape. You would have that power. Sales is always going to be the leader. I would not deny that fact. But the moment you are able to produce those metrics, the ROI metrics, to CFO to get more budget, to justify it. So, most of the time companies are moving where, the perception, so it's a change management thing. The perception is marketing is cost center, right? Mm-hmm. But now when the marketing leaders are thinking about it and they are able to prove the marketing ROI, what they are doing is they are changing that perception from the cost center to the revenue center. And that's the win-win game for everyone in an organization.
And I would say bringing them in early enough,
yes,
right, really then becomes fundamentally critical to prove that it actually can work.
Yeah. So that should be the goal. When we take on any project, we do the audit and then we start with that end result in mind. So, we are able to prove the ROI on each and every campaign, the attribution, and then, it's a success for everyone.
Yeah. And I think that in a way, all of us hence agree that's why marketing ROI measurement is so critical. So I think we have a minute left. I don't know if there are any questions. Apologies, obviously, we didn't get a chance, but yeah, please go ahead. You can hardly see anybody.
I know.
It's tough to see. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we all agree that it's a bit hazing. It's difficult really to measure how effective marketing is. Mm-hmm. And my question is back to education, because if we don't educate our clients or stakeholders, they can just take the budget away, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of a question to you guys. What do you do to educate your stakeholders, your clients? Is it a workshop, onboarding, weekly or monthly touch bases? Just a little bit of best practices from you. Thank you.
Sure. I'll start, I guess. So when I'm in-house, I focus more on quarterly meetings, updates. Out of house, sometimes it depends on who I'm working with and what they need and the time frame of the end goal. But for me, I think the biggest thing is communicating the metrics that you're going to use to measure it right when you start. This is our goal. This is how we're going to measure it. And this is what we're looking for. And then updating compared to that throughout. Hey, our goal for Q1 was here. We're actually here, or we're not doing great here, but we're making this change based on this. And just speaking numbers. There's not a company around that doesn't speak numbers. Unfortunately, it is hard to communicate things like brand loyalty, even back to the company that's asking for brand loyalty, because it's not in numbers. But I would say just establish the metrics you want to use the day you establish that you're going to start a project.
I would say with some of our clients, we are able to deliver those pickups or the metrics or whatever it is that we've outlined as some of the key performance indicators that we're going to use in partnership with them. On a quarterly basis, we deliver, sort of end of quarter reports, we call them, to all of our clients, and that reporting is certainly in there. The data is backing up what was secured, in the press, right? Press coverage now is linked to the data that is being presented. So that's helpful. And then in an end of year reporting for most of our clients, what we'll do is say, we'll take a quick look at what we did this year, but we really want to focus more of our time on next year. And here's what we're going to do a little bit differently based on how we moved the needle for your marketing programming this year.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay.
Yeah, so and I think from my perspective, the two things I would call out, while as Kelly and Nicholas and both of you said, right, be very careful of KPIs. They ought to link with revenue in some way. Again, I'm a user. I have a marketing head. I hold him responsible similarly for revenue. Make sure your KPIs connect with revenue in some shape or form. Again, back to attribution, whatever way you want to do it. I think that is number one. Number two, I think is this point. If you are smart, make sure you're being able to tag your opportunities so that you can get to LTV as well. So one of the problems I've seen that marketing suffers through is, since you guys, all of us are involved on the top of the funnel, many a times if a lead comes in, that's converted into a client, but 1 year down the line, that is, say from 100,000 is a $2 million client, that's already moved to sales. And hence, marketing, or even if you're an agency, you don't get credit of that. So be very, anal about saying, okay, this is the data point that is mine, and I want to track it through the life of that particular customer or client. That will give you both, your numbers will go up and always link it to revenue.
That's beautiful. I hope you all really leaned into that because that's powerful. And it could be a game changer for businesses and brands actually engaging in that way. I mean, if you're able to track it through the life cycle of that client, the reality is, my guess, my educated guess is that somewhere around 90% of that return from that customer or that nut that they're making every year is because of the marketing efforts, not sales efforts. It's because you continue to roll out the red carpet experience through your brand, through your engagement, through your events, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I will say too, keep your sales team happy and keep them informed. Okay, if you're working.
Is that right? Is that right?
It's that part for sure.
I know it sounds silly, but really, if they know what marketing efforts you have out there, then when they're picking up that phone, they can say, have you seen that video? Did you see these points? And instead of working separately, you can really work together better. I know it's not always a natural convergence in a company for marketing to go down to sales and say, hey, here's what we're doing. But I think opening that channel of communication can help that transition into a sale.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying create a role for chief sales and marketing officer like myself. So both report into him or her, and hence, you can't blame the other person.
So I think someone's calling time here.
Yeah, sorry.
We're getting the hook. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
What time we've got, sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. Hopefully this was helpful.
Thanks everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.